How do you do? Mr. Carl Lemley feels it would be a little unkind to present this picture without just a word of friendly warning. We are about to unfold the story of Frankenstein, a man of science who sought to create a man after his own image without reckoning upon God. It is one of the strangest tales ever told. It deals with the two great mysteries of creation, life and death. I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you. So if any of you feel that you do not care to subject your nerves to such a strain, now is your chance to, well, we've warned you.
Hello and good evening, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing you live on Facebook and YouTube land, so the chats are always fun, and remember we can't get to every chat, but your chat may show up in the show. And if you can't catch us live, catch us in the replay or in your favorite podcasting app. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957, in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up, Jason Richards. Hello and good evening.
Good evening. Jason Richards here, past master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia, member of Lafayette Lodge number 79 in Zanesville, Ohio.
Excellent. Welcome, welcome. And now, attending from Mobile Masonic Command, we have the one, the only, Robert Johnson.
Howdy, howdy. Only person ever to join a podcast while merging onto 295 in Chicago at 70 miles an hour. Anyway, do not recommend. 0 stars on Yelp. Anyway. Past Master Waukegan Lodge 78, Past Master Space Stovum 1183, the premier education lodge in the state of Illinois. Happy to be here this evening with all of you cohorts. Okay.
Almost got taken out by an oil tanker.
Live on the air.
Live on the air.
BC.
Well, if you hadn't been to a Masonic funeral, nobody first. Instant buried.
Gosh, what a dark way to start a Halloween show.
Yeah, you know, that's life, baby.
The only thing worse than having...
No, it's not life.
No, it's the opposite.
Life for the living.
The opposite of life.
As if having one person on the podcast driving is not it's bad enough. Well, we have 2 coming in with our audio stream. Our special guest, Robert William Marshall. How's it going, brother?
It is going well. Glad to be with all of you tonight. I initiated a new, the members of my life and I initiated a new man into Masonry this evening. And now I get to hop on and talk to some of my favorite people in the fraternity.
Awesome.
He means all of our viewers.
Yes, all of them. Well, I am super excited to have you on tonight. I have been hyping up this topic for weeks, so I'm really excited that you can make it on, and I appreciate the flexibility. So this will be fun. This will be really exciting. Awesome. Well, the first thing we do is give a special shout out to the patrons who support the show. Happy early Halloween, and if you want to support the show, head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable. We appreciate you. We had a new patron show up tonight, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Sweet.
Awesome. And Joe couldn't make it tonight, but regardless, we're still going to have the tarot card of the week just for him, just in his honor.
Tarot card of the week.
Hooray.
Hooray!
Tonight, we have the Oriental Skull Tarot
What?
in honor
Just
of,
skulls.
yes, nothing but skulls. And so,
There are no skulls in Masonry.
yeah, this was, I think, the first indie deck I ever got off Kickstarter. So I've had it for a couple of years now.
What have we got?
It is the Eight of Wands.
The 8 of Wands. That's spooky. So, 8 of Wands. We don't have that one show up that often.
No.
8 of Wands being a very action-oriented card, travel, speed. What did I say? All velocity, no vector. Like just going
Things
full
are
throttle.
in flight. Yeah.
Hey, just
Wands
like me and
being
RJ
very-
during the show.
Yeah, see? Look at that. It is a travel card, surprisingly.
It is.
It does indicate usually air travel, but definitely travel. So cards pulled it yet again.
Yeah. So if
That's
we
awesome.
ask for a clarifying card,
What's the clarifying card?
the Two of Wands.
The 2 of Wands. There's the skull I was hoping to see. So two of Wands, decision making, project management.
It's almost like saying it was a bad idea to hop on a podcast while traveling.
Yeah.
Damn it!
you had
Decision making and speedy travel. I don't know what that could be about.
Ooh, awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, travel safe. But yeah, there we go. Monsters and Masonry. These are all the passengers in Robert's car.
Which one?
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Let's get to tonight's topic because I'm super excited for our Halloween themed episode. You know, we always pull some good ones, and this one is yet another one that I'm looking forward to. Robert William Marshall has put together a traveling show that he does. So if you're in the Texas area, make sure you hook him up and look him up and get him to come to speak at your lodge because he goes into great detail. He is giving us the honor of talking about monsters and Masonry. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand the stage over to you, wind you up. I've got pictures. I've got whatever you need. So let's hear from it.
Pay extra for those.
I know. Yes. Got his Only Bros account. All right, take it away, Robert.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on. And just this Saturday, I'll be doing 2 lectures in North Texas in the city of Oklahoma City. You can work that geography out yourself. But the lectures will be at Guthrie. One will be my talk From Jesus to Bazookas, tracing a symbol through history. And the other will be about the history of Memento Mori and other skull traditions. So if you're going to Guthrie this weekend, make sure you come see me at the festive board or for the education in the afternoon during the reunion.
Love it.
But yep, we're talking monsters tonight. You guys can hear me okay, right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, so I'll get started. What if I told you that Dracula was based on a Freemason? No big deal, really. But what if I told you Dr. Frankenstein was also based on a couple of Freemasons? That the Mummy films, from the classic Universal film in the 30s to the all-time great films with Brendan Fraser, were also themselves on famous at one time. Zombies were a blend of Freemasonry with other traditions. One vampire's nothing, but all of these iconic creatures. Robert Louis Stevenson based Mr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde, I think I flipped those, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, on a Freemason out of Scotland who knew Robert Burns. It was a guy that was named Deacon Brodie, who was well liked during the day, but was actually a petty theft during the night. This inspired Stevenson's story. That's a lot of Masonic influence on some of literature and film's most iconic, scary creatures. And that is
They had a
what I'm
lot of
telling
experience with Grand Lodge officers.
Scary enough.
you. It's very scary, very scary. This is mild compared to that kind of scary. So I kind of happened across all of this accidentally over time, doing other research projects that are less sensational, I guess you could say. And I kind of realized one here, realized one there. And I was in Los Angeles at South Pasadena Lodge talking to a brother about some of my other rabbit holes. And he was the one who noticed, wow, you've talked about multiple horror figures. You might have a whole new topic on that. I was like, yeah, maybe I do. And so that's where we're at. And that's what I'm sharing with you. So we're going to start with the man who inspired The Mummy. The Fraser film is my favorite film of all time, but we'll start with the earlier versions. In 1929, a Berlin film called Cagliostro premiered. It was based in part on a book called The Jewel of Seven Stars by Bram Stoker, a man we will revisit later. The film was based more obviously, of course, on Cagliostro, a real-life person who's been a popular character in literature and film for a long, long time. This 1929 film was adapted by Universal Studios to make The Mummy in 1931 or 1932. And it was picked up again, as I said, in the 90s for the Fraser franchise. The original German film, though, was loved in America in the late 20s and was subsequently condemned, partially destroyed by the Nazis, who then came out with a different film in which Cagliostro again appeared, but this time as a supporting character and in much less savory light. In that latter film, 1943, Cagliostro stands in for German audiences as a sort of fanciful depiction of the Masonic mysteries, performing strange acts and magic, just like in the 1929 film. But in the Nazi version, he's juxtaposed against a newly established ideal of Germans as reasonable people determined to live good lives, unlike, according to the film, Jews and Freemasons, who, as the Nazis hideously claimed, were willing to trade good lives for obsession with power and greed. Here we can see a few screenshots from the films. Yeah, that's Cagliostro there, and that's his laboratory. Where's my spell? Here we go. The black and white ones are from the 1929 German film, and the color ones are from the Nazi version that came out almost 20 years later. Uh-oh. My notes are out of order. Oh, here we go. The last image, if you will go, it's a portrait of a man. Well, we'll get to it. The portrait will be of a Jewish poet, composer, and playwright named Amo Nadel. That's him, Amo Nadel, who wrote plays and poetry with Masonic and Taoist themes. Shout out to my Taoist Mason friend, Jeff Rapkin, if he's listening.
Interesting.
So Amo Nadel was popular among his local Berlin audiences, and he catered his work intentionally to combat belligerent tones he noticed among Germans developing in the post-World War I era. He was presciently afraid of what would happen if Germans became increasingly anti-Masonic, anti-Semitic, and otherwise xenophobic. Of course, we now know how right he was in his worries on this side of history. Nadel's work included a 5-act play about Cagliostro. So he's popping up again, this time on stage. Though Nadel's effort to steer Germans away from evil did seem to have initial success and popularity through his appeals to the better nature of Germans during the 1920s, his writings were banned when Nazis rose to power in the 30s, part of their backlash against what was viewed as the liberal and too diverse culture of the 20s. Nadel and his wife, at Auschwitz the same year that the second film in these photos came out, with its manipulation of a character to achieve the exact opposite aims for which Nadel had used it decades earlier. Efforts by Nazis to portray Jews and Masons as dark, greedy, occult forces not to be trusted are also, of course, prominently featured in the French Nazi film Occult Forces, also of 1943, and I think still available on YouTube. It's worth watching.
Yeah.
Which I think is highly ironic given given how obsessed Hitler and Nazi generals were with the occult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the occult.
Very hypocritical.
Decent documentary on that. I think it's on Netflix. But you're
Yeah,
right. Yeah, absolutely obsessed.
Yes. Do as we say, not as we do.
Yeah. So to this day, Freemasons wrestle with the results of that kind of Nazi propaganda or similar negative propaganda from before and after that era. There seem to be two main internal factions regarding the topic within Masonry today. One group of people argues that any notion of Masonry being secretive, with historic ties to occult practices, or things like Kabbalah, the likes of alchemists such as Cagliostro, they call these things silly and wrong. They say Freemasonry has nothing to do with the macabre or skulls or any of that stuff. The other faction argues that such ties are legitimate and that the Nazis were wrong for their persecution and manipulation of these things, proving once again that we can all agree Nazis are bad. I hope we can all agree Nazis are bad.
Yes.
Yep. Nazis are bad.
On this show, we can all agree.
But specifically with the case of Cagliostro, this figure who is being used for the mummy and these other the plays and poems and all this stuff, who's right? Was he a loony charlatan, as you'll find on Wikipedia, not worth considering in the history of Freemasonry, as some Masons even say? Or was he a brilliant Grand Master, a prototype for appendant bodies? Who was Cagliostro, the inspiration for the mummy? Sadly, in my opinion, his identity and memory have been unfairly marred by accusations that he was nothing but a con artist, formerly known as Joseph Balsamo. He may have been Joseph Balsamo, the con artist. Don't get me wrong. I think the mistake is in reducing him to only that, and maybe you'll agree with me after I talk about it, maybe not. Some have recently argued that this misunderstanding or reduction of his life began when a Mason in England, and this is documented during his lifetime, was jealous of Cagliostro's success as a Masonic leader there, and enhanced this backstory linking him to Balsamo. So maybe it was a case of, yeah, he'd made mistakes in life, and his detractors decided to emphasize those while trying to help people forget the good things he had done. That's what I suspect personally. And here's some examples of why I think there's more to him than just being Joseph Balsamo, even if he was that con artist. In Cagliostro's own papers, or in what's left of his writings and lessons, we find he possibly suffered confusion about where he came from himself. There was an idea, the best working theory currently is that he was the son of some noblewoman from in Malta. So it's thought he was some kind of orphan, which often results to confusion about one's origin. This theory about the noblewoman in Malta proposes that he was probably the abandoned, probably the result of some kind of affair, which led to him not knowing his father, but that he wasn't entirely abandoned or separated from his heritage, because without ever knowingly meeting his parents, he was furnished with lavish residences and paid tutors throughout his childhood. So from a young age, and as he first came onto the public scene, it was clear this was a very well-educated man, whatever his early background was. And the tutelage, yep.
So, real quick question: is it, in your opinion, based on just that alone, like the idea that Cagliostro was well educated, does that align with Balsamo? Like, was he also regarded as well educated?
You know, I think there was an idea that he must have been because he was so good as a con man. He was able to pull off some really elaborate schemes, supposedly. That might match it. There certainly are evidences that give credence to the idea that he was Balsamo. Uh, I can't discredit that he was Balsamo, but yeah, I would say so. And if not, he was at least really good at passing himself off as well educated. So whatever makes that possible.
Right on. Thanks, man.
Yeah. What we know of his early biography suggests that his tutelage included opportunities to travel across Europe from a young age. And he did claim, and some believed, that he did go to Egypt where he toured the pyramids and spent months studying with priests. Of course, other leaders of different kinds of appendant bodies and offshoots of Masonry would make similar claims for centuries. Uh, Cagliostro seems to be one of the first ones that really kind of started that trend. Uh, his travels did eventually bring him to London. He was initiated at Esperance Lodge 289 in Soho on April 12th, 1776. Not the most important thing that happened that year in world history, but still interesting. And the still existing lodge records show that members present were impressed by the fact that Cagliostro apparently already was familiar with Masonic teachings. So something he did, it's not exactly clear what, something he did or said at his initiation gave everyone the impression that this guy was already well learned with Masonic philosophy. And he at least claimed this was because of whatever he went through with priests in Egypt. It is also clear from his writings, or what's left of them at least, that he seems to have been previously initiated into some kind of, I'll say para-Masonic, maybe if it wasn't Masonic, or a proto-Masonic ceremony in the Middle East prior to this time. Maybe Egypt, maybe Malta. He claimed to have traveled across Africa, Asia, and all of Europe. Who knows? But he had learned something somewhere that impressed Masons at his initiation. The records of his travels do show that he and his wife would come for visits, especially as they became more famous, receiving grandiose receptions, impressing swarms of people who came to him for philosophical guidance. And there are examples in early, basically newspapers from the time. I have a few copies of them myself, of him being described as successful as a medical doctor, where local physicians had been failing. And again, he was claiming to be teaching or practicing some kind of Middle or Far East medicine that was having better effects than what they were already using in Europe. One account in Germany explains that Cagliostro set up an actual hospital of some sort, where that account claimed he cured as many as 15,000 patients. I suspect that number is inflated. But again, it was said to have been using techniques unknown to locals. The neat thing is that he apparently never charged for medical services, though he certainly charged for other things, not for medicine. And he was referred to in some European circles as, quote, the founder of charity hospitals, which is kind of a cool epithet for an early Grandmaster Mason, if you want to count the Egyptian rite for Grandmastership.
So did he actually practice reputable medicine, or was he more of the just take some cocaine and walk it off?
Get the ghosts out of your blood.
You know, they didn't
This was
understand.
The 1700s.
Yeah, it's the 1700s. They didn't understand what it was he was practicing. So maybe it was quack medicine. Maybe it was something legitimate from the East. The real doctors at the time were pretty quacky. So I don't know. I think it's kind of hard to discern exactly what he was doing. But people seem to love it. It was written well about in papers and stuff. Later on, Cagliostro lived in France, and that's where he officially founded the Egyptian Rite. There, he remained and grew in influence until none other than Marie Antoinette and King Louis XVI were embarrassed, supposedly by Cagliostro, when he revealed Antoinette's involvement in a scandalous affair, very famous. You can Google the what do they call it, the Emerald Affair, and that led to the king publicly defaming Cagliostro as a fraud. He was banished from France after 9 months in jail. A great crowd of people was said to have followed him when he made his way out of the city of Paris. And according to some records, in a speech, he declared that the lying monarch would soon fall. He described how the queen and the king, along with a number of other power-hungry dictators, would soon, and I quote, lose their heads to the liberty and free-thinking rulers of the future. I, Cagliostro, will never return to France until this has come to pass and the Bastille is overtaken as a symbol of the people, end quote. This was
Wow.
supposedly said in the summer of 1786. Of course, 3 years later, the warning proved eerily accurate with the French Revolution. Did he say that? Did he not? I'm not sure. I think it's a little too on the nose. If he really did say that, he was really some kind of magician with his predictions. But that's what was printed for what he said on his way out of the city.
Yeah, sometimes diss tracks come to pass.
Yeah. After leaving Paris, Cagliostro did continue to share the Masonic Egyptian rite and general mystical teachings. He went to England, Germany, and then he went to Rome, where, especially in the 1700s, if you were a Mason and teaching magic, Rome was probably not a good place to go because, as he did, you might fall on the wrong side of the Vatican. And in the 1700s, being on the wrong side of the Vatican was a very bad idea. Proved to be fatal in Cagliostro's case. And the influence of Egyptian mythology, as well as some of the claims Cagliostro made about it on Masonry, really should be explored by Freemasons, I think. I lead such an exploration in another presentation. I know Joe Martinez does well. His is better than mine. But definitely look into that if you haven't already. I think it's unfortunate that in some places we'll find uses of what I believe to be remnants of the Egyptian rite, such as in the Scottish rite, where it's not really credited or made clear that there was a whole Egyptian rite using that stuff at one point. But let's give me 1 second. I got to skip past some notes.
All while driving, no less.
There we go. All right. So Cagliostro's Egyptian rite. I'm going to skip a lot of the stuff I sometimes cover on Egyptian Masonry in general. Like I said, you can make that a whole other presentation. But his rite taught many ideas and themes tied to Egypt through a series of degrees, with 3 repeatedly announced goals being necessary for a man or a woman, because the Egyptian rite did admit women, at least as early as the 1700s, to be raised as a master mason. Through the study of the natural order, Cagliostro explained, man would accomplish 3 things. 1, tolerance and communion of all religions. 2, charity. And meaning, caritas, the Greek word for perfected love towards all, not just the almost mindless giving away of money that happens at a lot of the lodges now. It's a deeper concept. And number 3, communion with the grand architect of the universe. So tolerance and communion of all religions, charity towards all, and communion with the grand architect of the universe. The ultimate result, according to the Egyptian rite, of these 3 goals was said to have been the perfection of man through the benefit of all mankind. And Cagliostro's writings for the degrees were publicly burned by the Inquisition prior to his death, but the church did publish a review of it that gives a little insight to its contents, albeit perhaps biased because of who was publishing it. I think it's interesting to read. Here's a quote from it, but it's much longer. You can look it up. It contains rites, ceremonies, and a system which is superstitious. impious, blasphemous. It includes the pagan Egyptian ceremonial use of incense, emblems of divine trinity, the moon, the sun, the compass, the square, 1,000 other scandalous particulars. It steals the patronage of our beloved St. John and deifies the master of a lodge by requiring members to invoke his name every time they speak. People of all religions are allowed in this Masonic order. The Jew, the Calvinist, the Lutheran, the Muslim, the Buddhist, and the Catholic equals. All that is required is that they believe in God and the immortality of the soul. End quote. Really scary stuff that he was being executed for.
Yeah, I'm really scared of all the things that he did there.
The church's
immortality of
condemnation.
the soul is like heretical.
What'd you say?
Is it the immortality of the soul is heretical?
I guess in the context of someone else teaching it was the issue.
Yeah.
The church condemnation goes on to list a variety of characteristics of the Egyptian rite. For hundreds of years, the list was the only glimpse into what his degrees contained. But not too long ago, a Frenchman donated an antique book to the Grand Lodge of Scotland, believed to be an actual copy from Cagliostro given to a friend, or a secondary copy from that. And so now you can read a lot more about the Egyptian rite, almost firsthand, in Bob Cooper's book. Bob Cooper and Philippa Fox, they provided with an English translation of the Egyptian Masonic rite. Highly recommend it. It's a fun read. It's worth reading. And in the translation, it includes a study of William Shaw's statutes to help give context to like the ancient art of memory in Egyptian Hermetic tradition. I think a lot of times these days, Masons think of the art of memory as just this mundane thing that we have to get through. But back then, it was considered a really transformative art that they were practicing and inherent to the tradition they were trying to maintain, with references to ancient Greece and Egypt, which is why it's relevant, I think, to Cagliostro, the inspiration for the mummy. So I'm going to work a little bit ahead here. I will say I'm hopeful that Cagliostro's public image could. I like to spend time talking about him with folks. So thanks for letting me include him. And you can find a couple of those early films from the silent era about Cagliostro, again, online. They're well worth watching. It's interesting to see their use of Jewish and Masonic stuff as props in the scenes. But from the mummy, I'm going to move, unless y'all want to pause for comments or jokes or anything, to Dracula. Should we turn to Dracula?
Keep rolling. This is great.
All right, to Dracula we go. So before I look at specific inspirations for Dracula, I must begin anytime talking about vampires, that for a long, long time, vampires, including the Dracula character, have been interpreted as, with some degrees of accuracy, as caricatures, rather cruel caricatures of immigrating Jews, depicting them as wealth-obsessed, dark monsters threatening society. The connection between Freemasons and Jews, of course, the mutual persecution of both, is older than the Grand Lodge era, even. There are also specific Freemasons relevant to the development of the vampire as it exists in pop culture, so not just Dracula. Turning my page. So it's generally agreed that the most influential figure on Brother Bram Stoker's character, Count Dracula, was his own boss and mentor, Sir Henry Irving, not Vlad the Impaler. That's a theory that came out in the 70s, almost 100 years after Stoker's book. It's based on Stoker's personal journals and notes. He was aware of the existence of Vlad the Impaler, but he played a very small role in crafting the actual character. So I'm going to quote here from Brother Prescott out of England, a little summary about both Stoker and Sir Henry Irving, Stoker's boss and mentor. Irving was initiated and became an entered apprentice in Jerusalem Lodge 197, meeting at Freemasons Hall in London, April 27th, 1877. Irving was initiated by the master of the lodge, the organist, Sir William Cousins. However, it was some years before Irving passed to the next degree of fellowcraft, which occurred at a meeting of Jerusalem Lodge in November of 1882. Irving was finally raised to Master Mason in January of the next year, and he continued to be a member of Jerusalem Lodge for the rest of his life. Henry Irving was the most famous actor in the world at the time. He was the Tom Cruise of especially Victorian England. He had been a member also of the Savage Club since 1871. And the Savage Club was proposed in 1887 to adopt a Masonic lodge that would be attached to it, kind of connected to the club and dining on its premises. Irving was among those who signed the petition for the lodge and was its charter treasurer. Although Irving served as treasurer for just 1 year, he continued as a member of Savage Club Lodge number 2190 until his death. And in 1893, he also joined St. Martin's Lodge 2455, so a member of 3 lodges, being elected an honorary member of that one. And he was a supporter of Masonic charities as well, making lots of donations to 2 Masonic schools and the Royal Masonic Benevolent Institution. So the most famous actor in the world at the time was a very active Mason, and he was an inspiration for Dracula as a character. He did stall, as I said, as an apprentice for 5 years before prosecuting the science. That's the phrase Victorian British Masons used to describe what was necessary for a man to become a fellowcraft. You had to prosecute the science of the entered apprentice degree to qualify. This event occurred simultaneous to and seems to have been prompted by a visit from Queen Victoria's favorite son, Brother Leopold, the Duke of Albany, and just in time, because the Duke died as a result of hemophilia just 2 years later. Hemophilia was a condition made rather interesting in the context of our subject. It was common at the time to suspect that blood disorders were caused by a vampire or contact with some similar type of monster. And 5 years after that, Brother Irving, who had become a Master Mason in the meantime, as I said, was the charter treasurer for Savage Club Lodge. And I think they didn't use this term then, but it was what we would call it an affinity lodge now, special interest lodge, created to accommodate the interests of Freemasons and candidates who were already members of the Savage Club. So if you're not familiar with the Savage Club, it was kind of like a literary and arts club. Most of the members were writers and artists. I think it still exists. And they brought their creative talents to the craft after starting the spin-off lodge by adding to and enriching the degree work with their different talents. So they enhanced the ritual, if you will, which is something the Texas Committee on Work would clutch their pearls at. But the creativity really paid off because they had 124 members by just 18 months into existence. Really rapid increase even for the Victorian era. And despite serving as an officer and participating in his lodge somewhat consistently over the years, there are also quite a few letters from him showing he frequently sent his regrets for not being able to attend meetings. The reasoning always included rather vague wording, something like, "Due to the exacting nature of my present work, I must forego the pleasure of the lodge meeting." One begins to wonder if his assistant, Bram Stoker, based the famous character on his mentor as a sort of joke about the latter's frequent and poorly explained absences from lodge. Keep that in mind if you're a secretary. Next time someone keeps missing lodge, you could start a rumor that they're a vampire and that's why they're never there. Yeah, I've done it with I've done it with 2 members of my lodge. It's going really well. And near the end of the 1880s, of course, Jack the Ripper performed his infamous attacks. There's some interesting sources out there. You can look online. There's some books that cover it that claim the Ripper murders were performed by high-ranking men who used masonry and murder to cover embarrassing mistakes they'd made socially. I'm not going to get too into those. I think they're hogwash. They're fun to read, entertaining, but it seems like a stretch. They talk about um, the victim's wounds matching Masonic penalties and stuff like that. But I don't know. It is interesting though to for our topic to mention that the 1901 Icelandic edition of Dracula included a claim by Stoker that his vampire originated from the same source and excited the same, quote, repugnance as Jack the Ripper. Could he have been suggesting that his mentor, Henry Irving, somehow participated in the murders? Probably not. He was probably alluding to the fact that the Jack the Ripper murders had kind of excited everyone's curiosity and horrified people in the same way that his character would, is what I think he was probably going for. So the vampire, no, I already said that about the victims, the physical description, and this is where it, I think, really interesting for considering a Mason who had inspired Dracula. In the book Dracula, the physical description by Stoker of his central character strongly resembles the appearance of his mentor Henry Irving. The peculiar way in which Dracula enters the building through a sort of exchange that precedes entry through a dark room before arriving in the inner light. These are the kinds of things that have come up looking at some Masonic symbolism, maybe. But moving away from especially the Ripper claims that I think are a stretch, there are other points worth considering regarding Freemasonry and Dracula. So Stoker began writing the story while he was in Philadelphia. It was only days after brother Oscar Wilde had been either arrested or convicted for I don't know what they called the actual crime, but it was for being gay or for being bisexual.
It was lewdness.
Thank you, lewdness. And they were part of the same circle. Stoker's wife was Oscar Wilde's ex-girlfriend. So it's interesting that this person who he had been at least somewhat close to very prominently gets treated as a monster in public, and within days he's writing this story that people, especially in the LGBTQ community, have traditionally said this is a very campy, gay-friendly story or character. So that's another potential interesting influence from a different Mason, Oscar Wilde, on the character of Dracula. With the characters Dracula and Van Helsing, who was based on an Anglican priest that he consulted for learning about vampires. No, he's usually described as having masterfully explored the themes of darkness and light, dualism, as we do on the checkered pavement, but in a quintessentially Victorian or Gothic way. And valuable as a lesson then and now, it turns out that the solution to the problem of Dracula proves to be a cooperation between tools of science and religion by the protagonist characters. I think this that's a topic I always find really interesting. I think Freemasonry has clung to this idea that we should try to figure out how science and religion can work together, while modernity has been constantly trying to stretch them apart. And it's really the main theme of how to conquer this monster in Dracula. The Dracula character was adopted for the screen in Germany during the 1920s for Nosferatu, famously. The infamous creeping figure in desperate need of a dentist and some nail clippers. In that adaptation, we again see Germans tapping interesting symbolism and references, clearly playing to the audience's intrigue connected to Hermeticism, Freemasonry, the occult in general. You can see it in the letters and some of the background material in the scenes. Moving backwards in time, though, from Stoker's genre-defining work, we find that the British writer and doctor John Polidori, whose doctoral thesis was about sleepwalking, not an irrelevant topic for vampires, was at a dinner party on a summer night in 1816 when, after reading some fantasy stories with friends, he was inspired to write the vampire, spelled with a Y instead of an I, a word he'd gotten from the work of biologist Erasmus Darwin, a very active Mason and the grandfather of the more famous Darwin. This was a story about a murderous fiend named Lord Ruthven, who tricks a friend into making a brotherly promise to keep his vampirism a secret before betraying the friend by marrying his sister. He also later kills the sister. This was considered the birth of the vampire literature genre, 1816, and it's not even the most important story that came out of that night's story contest, which is how the story came about. No, there was a much more important and famous story that came out of that story contest, and we'll be turning to that figure next. But before I do turn to that one, I want to talk about the vampire idea in general a little bit instead of just Dracula or vampire literature.
No, this is great. Why don't we, how about this?
Go ahead.
This is going great. And so I think I was just looking at the time. I think that this would make a great, like, two-part episode.
Okay.
Because I don't want us to rush through the remaining part, but I do want to kind of get the thought out here and then open it up for any other last-minute questions in the chat, and then maybe bring you back on as early as next week if you're available. So we'll figure that out.
Let me just. I'm finishing vampires. It'll be a few sentences.
Definitely finish that.
Yeah. Finish vampires. So stake through the heart and all.
So there's a book by an author named Le Couteau. It's a great book on the history of vampire myths. You can Google it. I think a lot of it's online. You can find on Google Books. It includes a Romanian legend. Now, this is something I verified elsewhere. I think there's a Wikipedia page for it. The Romanian legend, and this goes back centuries, where it was about masons, stonemasons, who hid souls in the construction of their buildings. A Romanian stonemason tradition of burying an effigy of a person in the building walls. According to one version, they would measure the person's shadow using a reed and then bury it in the foundation. Within 40 days, the person would die and their soul would become a vampire-like ghost, strengthening and protecting the building it was trapped in. In other versions, the actual person themselves would be trapped alive inside a stone wall or foundation as a sacrifice. And Romanian stonemasons apparently were thought to do this because of a superstition that a building would be unstable and weak without fulfilling the horrific task. Accompanying this legend was the fear among Romanians that stonemasons could steal their shadow. So that's what I got for vampires. And yeah, that's a stopping point if you want to stop there and pick up next week with Frankenstein and zombies.
That sounds perfect. So yeah, this is fantastic. What do you think is like the strongest connection you've seen so far? Because I love how you address the things that I've heard as well for some of these monster myths on there's like weak ties or some weak associations. Most of it for good storytelling, but I think like what have you found to be the strongest evidence for some of these connections? I mean, you've definitely talked about the connection between Bram Stoker and his friends there. Is it because of like the friend group, the association that was going on at the time, or what else do you think were like really stronger influences?
Larger Researches magazine about the Stoker one, where I go more into depth there. The really strong connection there is that Bram Stoker was in love with Henry Irving. Was it actually homoerotic? That's debated. It was definitely homosocial. He was absolutely obsessed with his boss. And when he writes about him after seeing him perform for the first time, he talks about being captivated and how his life had a new passion. And so he's really the Reinfeld. I think Reinfeld is the character in the book, the Dracula's assistant, who's kind of weird and obsessed with him. Thank you, Renfield. That's actually Bram Stoker. That's a self-portrait of his relationship with Henry Irving. And this is well established. It's not theory anymore. It's well established in the literature community. For the last 15, 20 years, the only real debate about it is how intimate their relationship was, whether it was just a friendship where he was obsessed with him or not. So that's a really
clear.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really clear and well-established connection there. And uh, what we'll talk about next time, I'd say the that one that's bona fide is Shelley outright dedicated Frankenstein to Erasmus Darwin, the Freemason, and his experiments that were partially inspired by Ben Franklin's electricity. And she also references Franklin himself. So that's definitely inspired by Freemasons. But then the clearest, most explicit connection will be with zombies.
Nice.
Because zombies come from West African traditions and Vodou, which is sensationalized as voodoo in films.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll show you with the images and the description of some of their religious mythology. There's no mistaking. They talk about one of their Loa being the mother of Freemasonry, a Masonic initiation starting the Haitian slave revolution,
Nice.
and this idea that slaves developed that because they could be initiated as Masons, proving they have free will, meant they didn't have to be slaves. So really interesting stuff going
Yeah,
on
that's a
there
good
that ties to
teaser
zombies.
for next week. Yeah. Last question I had for you, back to Cagliostro. Do you think because of his influence and his Egyptian rite and all that, do you think I'm kind of leading the witness based off of how you started the presentation? Do you think that the style of this interweaving of Hermeticism and Kabbalah and all that led to the mystery of the occult around things like Freemasonry and kind of given a little extra flavor, which adds to the mystery of it, and which is why it kind of got him in trouble as well?
Yeah, I think it's definitely what got him in trouble. I think he was picking up on a pre-existing trend, but yeah, I think for sure
Okay.
that was the real rub. Um, but also, these days Masons will kind of make throwaway comments about the church thought Freemasonry was a threat. How silly is that? I try to push back on it because, in my opinion, I have a lot of appreciation for the Catholic tradition. I do, but the Catholic Church of 400 years ago was extremely powerful, and the idea that you could go somewhere else to explore spiritual development and you could mingle with people of different faiths. I think that actually was a genuine threat to the church. The church
Right.
believed it, and I don't think they were wrong. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, and didn't have to be, but I think that the way things were structured, it was an actual threat to the power structure that they were running.
Wow.
So yeah.
No, that's awesome. Jason, anything else comes to mind? Any questions lingering you've had?
No, I think the biggest question I have was who was kinkier, Cagliostro or Crowley?
Well, I think Crowley claimed to be a reincarnation of Cagliostro at one
Yes, he
point.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So the answer is yes.
Yes.
the answer is all of the above. Yes.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic. Robert, I'll hand it over to you first for your kind of your final pause and wrap up for this part
Okay.
of the Monsters of Masonry. Anything else that you wanted to kind of put a bow on before we sign off for today?
No. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoy this topic. I hope it's fun for your listeners, and I look forward to talking more with you about Frankenstein.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so you know, like the chat's been lighting up. Everyone's been enthralled by it. So, yeah, definitely looking forward to part 2. So I
Nice.
appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Jason, final thoughts on what you've learned so far?
Oh, just pleased as punch for Brother Robert to come out. I had learned a lot of history, and just really enjoyed the topic and the conversation. Really glad that we didn't rush through it, and
Right.
so looking forward to part 2 next week, and it'll be great.
Awesome. Yep. Couldn't have said it better. Yeah. Thank you so much again, Brother Robert, for coming on. This has been fascinating, well researched, and I like your flow too. It was very well put together, so I appreciate that. And a great episode for Halloween. For all of you, have a great Halloween. Remember, there's no skulls in Masonry, so don't let those slip in. Otherwise, you might go the way of Cagliostro. With that, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.